We should raise taxes. What's the first thing that pops into your mind when I say these words? Is it maybe that you have counter arguments? You believe, well, if we do so, maybe rich people would leave the country. Or maybe you believe something about me. You think, who's this guy? It's so stupid to say something like this. If you do any of those, I think that you can really learn something from this video. Because the first thought that you should have into your mind is why? Why do I believe that we should raise taxes? And to understand why this is the question that you should ask, we need to look at what is an argument. An argument is nothing else than a set of sentences that we usually call premises that should give you good reason to believe a conclusion. For example, in our case, the conclusion that we should raise taxes. So when you ask me why, it forces me to show you what are my reasons, what are the premises that I have to support the arguments. And that could potentially be here that premise 1, there are kids starving in the street. Premise 2, if we would raise 1 million, we could feed them. Premise 3, the taxes could actually raise the 1 million, so we should raise taxes. But maybe I have other reasons, other premises. It could be simply that I say that I hate the rich. That's my premise 1. And that taxes just hurt the rich. That would be my premise 2. And that leads to the conclusion, well, we should raise taxes. So here we see exactly the challenge. It's when I say we should raise taxes, you don't know what my reasons are. And here, the one that I presented are very different. One is simply based on the hate of the rich. The other one is based on saving the children. And by the way, this is what Jubilee, the YouTube channel, uses to create a bit of confusions in their debates that they have. Because one person brings a conclusion. It simply states we should raise taxes. And then others come and try to discuss it with them. However, most of the time, they don't really ask why, what are the premises. So they're just trying to blindly attack the arguments, the conclusion of the person, without understanding his reasons why he believes so. Okay, now we have premises and a conclusion. But we should do something first before we can start challenging the argument. And what we should do is what many people hate, especially about philosophy. We should clarify language. And before you roll your eyes, I need to explain to you why. The reason is not that you want to be nitpicky and that you want to be pedantic and play on words and everything. Rather is that language is very mysterious and it's very complex. We don't understand most of language. And I can give you a few examples. I could say, well, today I'm going to the bank. Is that I'm going to the financial institution or simply to the bank of the river? We don't know. It's ambiguous. In the same way, I can say, I saw a man with a telescope. Who had the telescope? Did I use the scope to see the man, or did the man have a telescope? Or Sally told Erna that she won. Who won? Is it Erna that won, or is it Sally? Okay, you get the gist. I hope language is weird. And so now we can try to apply it to the conclusion that I proposed. When I said we should raise taxes, we can break down this whole conclusion. First, who is we? Because we doesn't refer to anybody in particular. It really depends on context. Then, when we say raise taxes, by how much do we need to raise it? Is it just raising it at the minimum? Is it enough for us? Should we raise this 1 million? Should we raise more than that? This is undefined. And then when we talk about taxes, what kind of taxes it is? Is it taxes on the income, on wealth, on sales, and so on? And finally, when we say we should raise taxes, we use the word should. And the word should is a normative statement. So this is something special that I will look at a bit later in the video. And now you have an understanding of the premises, the conclusion, and you understand also what is the message, the meaning that the person wants to communicate. You clarified the language, so now you don't strawman the opponent. You don't try to play on the words that have different meanings. You really try to understand what is the strongest way this argument can be convincing. Now, what should you do? Well, you should assess if this argument is actually strong or not. And there are two ways to do that, because an argument can be valid and sound. A valid argument is simply an argument whose conclusion logically follows from its premises. So let me give you an argument. Premise 1, pigs have wings. Premise 2, wings carry their weight. Conclusion, therefore, pigs can fly. Would you say is it a valid argument? Yes, it is, because if pigs have wings, if the wings can carry their weights, then logically, pigs can fly. And now you say, well, what do you mean? That's not a valid argument. A valid argument is a good or a true argument. But this is where words are very important again, because when logicians or philosophers are using the term valid for an argument, they don't mean that it's just like, oh, that's convincing or it's a good argument. They mean precisely that it's simply an argument whose conclusion logically follows from its premises. So you need to imagine, if that was the case, if pigs had wings and if they could carry their weights, then what logically follows? Not what it is in reality, but what follows. Well, they could fly, and we don't have pigs that fly, but logically, this is a valid argument. And so now you wonder, well, if that's a valid argument, then that's all BS. This is not true. And that is why we have this second term, which is soundness. And a sound argument is a valid argument with true premises. So for example, premise 1, humans are mortal. Premise 2, Socrates is human. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. This time we can see that the argument is valid if humans are mortal, if Socrates is human, therefore it follows that Socrates is mortal. And in the same way, this time we can see that humans are mortal is a true statement, and Socrates is human is also a true statement. So the argument is sound. And so in general, what we want is sound arguments. I'm setting aside here the distinction between inductive arguments and deductive arguments. It changes a bit, but globally, broadly, you can go with sound arguments are the one that we're aiming for. Okay, and a few minutes ago, I said that the should in our conclusion, we should raise taxes, is problematic. The philosopher David Hume found out that we cannot go from a descriptive state of the world into a normative one. And this is what he called the is-art fallacy. If in the premises you're only describing something, such as, oh, the kids are starving in the street, we could raise this amount of money, and taxes can raise this amount of money, then you cannot reach the conclusion that we should do something about it. We cannot go from this is this way, this is this way, therefore we should do something. And so what about the kid starving argument that I proposed before? Well, it's invalid because it doesn't follow from the premises that I've shown that we should raise taxes. But that doesn't mean that we can never claim that we should do something about it. The fix for that is to go in the argument and add a single premises. No kids should starve in the street. And now my argument is valid because if we accept all of the premises, then the conclusion this time follows. Does that mean that this is the case, that we should do that? We should raise taxes if that is so? Well, not yet, because now you can challenge the argument. There are three ways to challenge an argument. Either you can attack one of the premises. If you manage to show that one of the premises is false, then the argument is defeated. Well, that doesn't mean that it's defeated, you won, and you're the best. It simply means that the person making the claim needs to face that and can now try to improve, try to maybe adapt the premise to make sure that it's actually true. And then through this process, we're going to get closer to a strong argument and something true. In our example, we can challenge any of the premises. Maybe there is no kid starving in the street. Maybe we couldn't raise this 1 million. Maybe even you could challenge that it's wrong that no kids should starve in the streets. Maybe you're a pessimist or something and you think, well, this is just how life is or something. The second way to challenge an argument is to attack its conclusion. So maybe the logic is perfect, but the conclusion is just not acceptable. For example, if I say, premise 1, we should take the decision which saves the most lives. Premise 2, harvesting one healthy person's organs against their will will save 5 dying patients. Therefore, we should harvest one healthy person's organ against their will. Well, even though the logic is great, we probably agree that we shouldn't accept to harvest the body of a healthy person just to save others. So what happens there? Well, if we cannot accept the conclusion, then maybe we should work backwards and we should look again at the premises. And even though they seem true, maybe they're not. And in our case here, we can see, for example, that premise 1 might be too restrictive. Maybe it's not only saving lives that matters, but also maybe the individual rights or the dignity of humans also matter. And the third and last way to attack an argument is to challenge its validity. As we said before, validity, a valid argument, is one where the conclusion follows from the premises. If we want to attack it, we just have to show that the conclusion doesn't follow from the premises. So for example, we can say premise 1, all frogs are mortal. Premise 2, Socrates is mortal. Therefore, Socrates is a frog. Here we can see that the premises seem fair, they are true, but it just doesn't follow from that Socrates is a frog. And the reason is that mortality is shared by many, many things. Socrates could be a human, it could be a frog, it could be a dog, and so on. So there you go. This is the only 3 ways to actually challenge an argument. Either you challenge one of its premises, or you attack the conclusion itself, or you attack the fact that it's not valid. The conclusion doesn't follow from the premises. So let's get back to the beginning. When I said we should raise taxes, well, I said you should ask why. Now you understand why I said this, because of how arguments are set up. To get better at arguing, here are a few steps that we need to take. The first one is to ask why. When someone makes a claim, don't start just blasting at them and saying, oh, you're stupid, or blasting arguments. Try to really understand the position of the other. And the way to do this is to ask why. The second step is to clarify the terms of the arguments. The goal is not simply to win and to show your dominance over your opponent. It's to try to make the best argument that you can out of the claim that he made and the premises. So make sure that you understand what the person is trying to mean, because language is extremely weird and it's very easy to misunderstand an argument. The third step is to identify those premises and this conclusion. You need to understand the structure of the argument. When I say we should raise tax, what am I justifying it with? Identify which are my premises, the reason for my argument, and the conclusion itself. And once you have this structure, then you need to go to step 4, checking the validity and the soundness of the argument. Do the conclusion follow from the premises? Is it logically valid? And are the premises true? And only then can you go to step 5 to try to challenge the argument. It doesn't mean that we need to win the argument. I really believe that if we attack the premises, the conclusion, or the validity, the goal from the others then are to adapt the argument. And if we manage to go through a dialectic process and to exchange, when I say, well, you say that all frogs are mean, it's not possible because I know that one frog is not mean, then you need to guard your premises and say, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it's not all frogs that are mean, but maybe it's some frogs that are mean. That's a much stronger argument. We're so used to claims that are so general that they're very bad arguments, not only because they're not valid and sound, but also simply because it's very rare that all things are a certain way. And so when someone says, all rich people are mean or whatever, probably not. It's just a bad argument. And now to conclude, many people will say, well, it's very complex. There are so many steps. There are so many things that I need to remember that it's just not possible to apply. And this is very, very fair. I don't think that this is something that we should try to apply on the spot all the time. We can do it, and it's good to do it to try to exercise, but this is not where you're going to learn how to really structure, build, understand arguments. What I do for myself, I try to have a consistent practice of it. This is something that you can, when you read in a book, you can try to see what the author is trying to communicate. How does he reach his conclusion? What is he trying to show you? The same when you have discussions with your friends or family. You can then reflect, even if you didn't do it on the spot, which probably you won't be able to do. You can still come back home, take a sheet of paper, take some pen, and try to reconstruct the argument. When I have a discussion with someone, at the end of the day, I come home and I wonder, I'm like, maybe he had a point, you know? And when I reconstruct the argument, I'm going to go to shame and frustration often because I'm like, wow, that was such a bad argument that I had. Or, oh, that was fallacious. What this person was trying to show me, actually, he missed the point. And that's it. That's just how life is. We are confronted with a lot of difficult information. And it's good to sit back and try to understand it and understand that we don't have it on the spot and we are not always right. And who knows, as you go through this process, maybe you can even learn something from it.